Hi class, today we are going to graph some vectors. So, I have three vectors, v, w, and u, and I want to graph the vectors that are found by adding and subtracting and scalar multiplying these vectors together. So, in part A, I'm asked to find the vector v minus w. So for part A, I'm going to use the fact that v minus w is really the vector v plus the vector negative w. So I'm first going to start by graphing the vector v, and from the terminal point of v, which is the point with the arrow of my ray there, I'm going to then graph the vector minus w, which is the same as the vector w but drawn in the opposite direction. So let's start with the vector v. So notice that vector v goes 2 units up and 3 units to the right. I started from the initial point to the terminal point. So if I put my initial point here, for v, I'm going to go 2 units up and 3 to the right. And that is my terminal point of vector v. So from that terminal point of v, I'm going to then draw the initial point of the vector negative w. Now since the vector w goes 2 units down and 2 to the right, to get to the opposite direction, I'm going to draw 2 units up and 2 to the left to get negative w. So 2 up and 2 to the left, and that is going to be the terminal point of my vector negative w. So to get the vector that is v minus w, I have to connect the initial point of v to the terminal point of negative w. And then graphically, that is what the vector v minus w looks like in red. All right, so now I'm going to erase this, and we're going to then get to part B. So for part B, I'm asked to find the vector 2v plus 3w. So 2v is the vector v, but I'm going to scale vector v by a unit of 2. So that just means instead of going 2 up and 3 to the right, I'm going to go 4 up and 6 to the right. Okay, so I believe I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 up, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the right, and this is my new vector 2v. In blue. Okay, now to get to the vector 3w, it gets a very similar treatment, except now instead of going 2 units down and 2 to the right, I'm going to go 6 units down and 6 to the right, since I'm scaling w by 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there ends up being my terminal point of 3w. And once again, to find the vector for part B that I'm looking for, 2v plus 3w, I'm going to connect the initial point of 2v to the terminal point of 3w. And there. Okay. All right. So now let's erase, and we will try part C. All right. So now we are going to find the vector c, which is 2v minus w plus u. All right, so that is the vector v scaled by 2. I'm going to then add the vector negative w to that, and then I'm going to add the vector u. So essentially what we're going to be doing is stacking 3 vectors on top of each other and then connecting the initial point of the first vector, which is 2v, to the terminal point of the last vector, which is u. All right, so we're going to start down here by graphing the vector 2v. So that means I'm going to go 4 units up and 6 units to the right. And there's my vector 2v. Now from my terminal point of 2v, I'm going to draw the vector negative w, which is the vector w drawn in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go 2 up and 2 to the right. Right. And this is my vector negative w. Now from the terminal point of negative w is where I'm going to draw the vector u, which is 3 units up and 1 to the right. So 1, 2, and I'm missing a unit there, and then 1 to the right. And we'll draw that one in blue again. So, and this should be my vector u. So now in red, I'm going to find the vector 2v minus w plus u. So that means I'm going to connect my initial point of 2v and connect it all the way up to the terminal point of u. So then this is the whole vector 2v minus w plus u. And that's how you graph vectors.